Wisconsin farmers excel at producing dairy products, cranberries, potatoes, and more. But what do lawyers produce? Well, that can't be good for crop production. My name is Kelly Wilfert. I'm a farm management outreach specialist with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. I specialize in legal risk, but we'll do our best to keep things upbeat as we talk about solutions to protect your Wisconsin farm. I do need to give a quick legal disclaimer that this video is for educational purposes only, to give general information and a general understanding of the law, not to provide specific legal advice. I am a licensed Wisconsin attorney, but I'm not your attorney. Thank you for joining me today to talk about the risks of oral farmland leases and how you can protect your Wisconsin farm. Oral, verbal, a handshake deal. There are a number of ways that you might refer to an unwritten farmland lease. But regardless of whether your lease is written or verbal, Wisconsin law still applies. Let's dive into the possible risks of an oral or verbal farmland lease. Number 1, some leases must be in writing to be enforceable. Under Wisconsin law, a real estate lease for any longer than 1 year must be in writing and signed by both parties, or it isn't enforceable. So for example, if you have a verbal agreement with a landowner to rent a piece of ground for 5 years, but they start renting to someone else after just 2, you won't be able to sue for breach of contract because that 5-year term wasn't in writing and isn't enforceable. Beyond just the length of the lease, unwritten leases can have big gaps in understanding between the landowner and the farmer. If you haven't discussed a particular item, some of those gaps may be filled in by state law, but you might not like the terms that the law provides for you. Some questions that I get regularly from farmers with unwritten leases are, when does the landowner have to give notice that they aren't leasing to me next year? State law says 90 days before the end of the term, but how do I know when the term ends? If it's not in writing, there might be a disagreement about when the first day of the lease was and when the last day of the term is. How about this one? I wasn't able to harvest before the end of the year, and my landlord isn't renewing my lease. Do I still have a right to harvest my standing crop? Well, it depends. And you might have additional liability for holding over or staying past the last day of your lease. You would be better served to negotiate a written lease with your landlord, or at least discuss what might happen if this situation arises. Who's familiar with this question? My landlord has decided they want additional conservation practices used. Can they make me? Again, we have situations where we might run into big gaps between what the landowner is thinking and what the farmer is thinking. The more things that you can discuss up front and get down on paper, the better served you're both likely to be. Save yourself that headache and your relationship with your landlord by discussing the terms of your lease, setting realistic expectations, and getting them in writing. Number 3, oral leases have limited protections for the farmer or tenant if the land changes hands. It's also possible that having a written lease can save your right to rent the land. Oral leases have limited protections for the farmer or tenant if the land changes hands. Over 1/3 of the farmland in Wisconsin is leased, which means that there are significant risks to not only your farm, but to Wisconsin agriculture as a whole, as the aging landowner population begins to pass their property on to new owners. While most oral farmland leases in Wisconsin are year-to-year tenancies, meaning that you can't be kicked out without cause before the end of the term, a new landowner may just not renew your lease for next year. Instead, consider negotiating a multi-year lease that transfers with the land, a multi-year option to lease the land, or even an option to purchase the land before your landlord sells or transfers the property, gets sick, or passes away. You can protect your farmland access with a written lease. To learn more about the terms of a written farmland lease, check out our additional resources at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension Farm Management page listed on the screen, or contact your attorney.